Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of dispersed camping and how it kind of compares to your normal, average sort of state park campgrounds that you may be accustomed to. So this video is really targeted for people that, are just kind of getting started in overlanding. Maybe you've heard about it, watched a couple videos, listened to a couple podcasts, and you're thinking, I kind of want to try that, but I don't really know what to expect, right? So again, I'm going to kind of walk you through the differences between campground camping, established KOA type camping versus dispersed camping in this episode, and talk about pros and cons, and then kind of give you some tips for how to get into it. So if you want to learn more about wild camping or dispersed camping, stay tuned.
Where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys, so as I mentioned in the intro today, I'm talking about dispersed camping, how to get into it, how to kind of switch it up if you've been to established campgrounds or, state park campgrounds or KOAs, that kind of thing, and you're trying to get out a little bit further, a little bit more remote, and you want to kind of know what to expect and what the pros and cons are of each, right? So let's break this episode up into three parts. We're going to start with sort of the comparison between a campground type experience and dispersed camping. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to bring and how to be prepared and how to safely find dispersed campsites. And then we're going to end with sort of pros and cons of each, just to kind of give you all of my thoughts on what the pros and cons of each are. And hopefully, again, that will get your mind going and kind of get you thinking about it in your own circumstances, whether it's right for you to go dispersed camping, right? So starting with what is dispersed camping versus campground camping. So we're all familiar, I imagine, with campground camping, right? Like when you go to a state park, you have to call ahead, you have to book a reservation, they give you a set spot. These spots are established, so there is no need for any sort of getting to them. You could literally take, a slammed lowered sedan or a stock Toyota Corolla, and you could drive through a paved road to your campsite and pull onto some gravel probably, and then set up a tent or a hammock or whatever, and you just camp in your spot. You pay money for it. It's not very much usually at a state park, but you do pay for it, and you're in an established spot, but you're also generally around people. You also have to make a reservation. You may go to make a reservation and sometimes they're booked up, right? So that is kind of like campground camping. Kind of the same thing works with KOA, right? There are electric spots, there are non-electric spots. You're around other people, so you have to kind of be ready and willing to interact with people. You're not looking so much to get off the grid. You're just kind of looking to maybe camp in a tent, read a book, get away a little bit, but without losing all the comforts of home and without having to have a dedicated or built trail rig to get you to the campsite. So again, that's and again, there is no shade being thrown at that type of camping at all. That's how I grew up, right? My folks, we wouldn't go camping that much. Actually, when I was a kid, I would wander out into the woods behind our house because I grew up in southern Indiana, and we kind of had quarries and just abandoned old quarries and forest everywhere, and you could kind of just hike out there and just camp wherever you wanted to. But when we would go camping, we would usually go to McCormick's Creek State Park, which is again as in southern Indiana. You would drive in through the gate, you'd say, we're here to camp, you show them your little pass or whatever, pay to get in. You go in, you could take advantage of the other amenities, you could swim at the pool, you could go horseback riding. There's all kinds of things in a state park, right? So if you like to do activities that are sort of paid but pre-planned for you, then a state park may be a good idea, right? But then you go back, you hit the gate at the campground, you show them whatever you say, I'm here for my reserved spot. They give you a map, you go back to your reserved spot, you set your stuff up, and you're there for the night or the weekend or whatever term you're going to be staying at the campground. But again, typically with that, you either could have an electric site or a non-electric site. So if you don't have any sort of power bank or any way to power anything, and you have some power needs or you're running electronics, you can get an electric spot and you're pretty well taken care of. There's generally toilets of some kind. A lot of the times they're pit toilets, which are a normal sort of toilet seat, but it just drops down into a big pit. So there's no flushing or anything like that. That for a lot of people is kind of a deal breaker. People don't like that even, but that is the more advanced or the more But that is something that's available there. You don't have to take care of your own waste, right? You don't have to bring a bathroom. You don't have to bring a toilet with you or, toilet paper or dig holes or do anything like that. You can just use the established bathroom. So that's kind of regular campground camping, right? Now, comparing that to dispersed camping, when we're talking about dispersed camping, you're talking about generally something like a national forest is, at least in my experience, what I have historically gone to. When it's national land like that, it's typically open for free, so there's no gates or anything like that. You don't have to pay to go into it. Anyone can go into the national forest and just kind of drive around and explore the Forest Service roads. Sometimes in those there are trails, and they'll be marked. I went out to West Virginia, and there was a trail that said, lifted 4x4 use only, and they had a sign that basically said, don't go back here unless you have a lifted 4x4 or some sort of four-wheel drive vehicle that can get you through some obstacles. So there are some trails like that in some national forests. Now again, where I'm from in Indiana and Hoosier National, we don't really have a ton of trails. It's more just gravel roads, right? So, but you could still go into the national forest wherever you want. You can find it on your map usually, so you could Google it. They have a website for Hoosier National Forest. They have it for pretty much every national forest, so you can find out where you're allowed to disperse camp. There are sometimes different rules from one national forest to the other. So I would definitely recommend Googling the national forest that you plan to go and explore and reading their website, right? See if you need some sort of like a sticker, if you need to buy like a permit. I know I go to Land Between the Lakes fairly often, and down there you have to pay for like a camping pass. So there are some rules around it, but if you go to their website, it's going to have a lot of that information on it. And worst case, if you are confused or you can't figure it out, you can always call the ranger office, right? So you could call the folks that work for the National Forestry Service, and they're very nice and they will help you. So if you're interested in it and you're getting out there, you may have to pick up the phone. But again, most of the time on the website, you can figure that stuff out. Where I'm allowed to go, what I'm allowed to do, how far from a creek or water source do I need to be. Like, there are some rules around it, but it's pretty straightforward. Once you've done it a few times, you'll get used to it. But again, the goal with dispersed camping, right, is to get away from people. So that is one of the biggest differences. Is with dispersed camping, the spots are more spread out in my experience. So again, like in Hoosier National Forest, they're not like in a campground where they're literally trying to get as many camp spots in there as they can, right? Like it's one on top of the other, and you're maybe 10 or 15 feet away from the next camping area. In National Forest, it's usually like, at the very least 500 to 1,000 feet separation between campsites, usually more than that. You'll drive down a road, you'll see one over here, you'll drive for another minute or two, you'll see one on the left side, right? They're definitely more spread out, so there's more seclusion, there's more privacy with dispersed camping. Again, sometimes there are some challenging trails that you could take if you like that sort of thing, if you like off-roading, to get to these campsites, which, again, that's part of the fun too, though, right? Is you're overcoming these obstacles to get to a beautiful location to camp at that not everybody can get to, right? Your friend down the street in a stock Toyota Corolla can't just take their Corolla out there. Recently, when we were in Land Between the Lakes, we actually saw an example of this. We hit this trail, and we had scouted it the day before, and it had this beautiful, awesome campsite out on Kentucky Lake. Like, it was right on the lake. And we had gone out there the day before, kind of scouted it. We ended up staying somewhere else the first night, but then the second day we're like, well, let's go out on that trail. And it was a pretty fun, nothing super crazy, but some off-camber stuff, some big ruts that you had to kind of straddle or go around or go through. And we kind of got back to that trail, and we're like, all right, we're going to go out here and go camping. But there was a Toyota Camry parked on the side of the road, just left, like parked. And we were like, I wonder if they broke down or if they parked here and they've like hiked back into there, because they could not. There's no way they could have gotten their car back to where this place was. We had a Jeep and a Frontier and a Tacoma, and all of us were lifted and on bigger tires and stuff and we wouldn't have been able to get out there in any sort of like a car. But so then we worked our way out there through this trail, and we get out there, and there were actually two spots at the end of this. It's split to the left and the right. We were wanting the one on the right, and they had luckily chosen the one on the left, but they'd taken a wagon. So they pulled up in their Toyota Camry, they'd taken a wagon, and then they'd walked like probably a mile and a half back into the woods to camp at this spot right on the water, which is cool, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. If you don't have a big lifted four-wheel drive, or if you don't want to modify your vehicle a ton, you don't have to do that. You could get close and then hike the rest of the way in. But that's what they had done, and then we went to the spot that we wanted on the water. And again, we were, even that spot that they were at was probably a quarter of a mile away from us down the lake, right? So they were quite a ways away from us. Like, we could barely see them where they were with their tent. But so like that, the beauty of just being on a lake and being able to swim in it, it didn't cost anything. We didn't have to pay anything. We didn't have to make a reservation, right? So it's kind of fun. It's like the big thing for dispersed camping, in my opinion, is that it's really neat to get out and see these things that, again, not a lot of people can see, and find these campsites that generally are very beautiful and sort of secluded because of just the nature of how national forests work, state recreation areas, that kind of thing. All right, so that will do it for kind of the differences between dispersed and traditional camping. So now let's move on to what you need to be prepared for dispersed camping, because there definitely are some differerences, as I've kind of touched on lightly in the first part of this podcast. So the big differences are that with dispersed camping, it's dispersed, right? So there's no paved roads generally. There's not going to be a DNR person out there to help if you had an issue or a medical emergency. There's not going to be toilets, right? You're not going to have those pit toilets. You're going to be in the middle of nowhere by yourself. So things to kind of think about and put on your mind and put in your mind as far as what you need, just bare bones basics to get started with dispersed camping is, some sort of a reliable, capable vehicle that can get you out to these places. And again, you don't have to do anything crazy. If you hit a trail that looks intense and you're not a big off-roader, you can turn around, right? A lot of the times those trails, though, that look intimidating, when you get through them, that's where you find that beautiful spot that not many people get to, right? So a capable, reliable SUV or truck or something that can get you out to these places, right? But again, I've done it in a Lexus sedan through Hoosier National. It's just gravel roads. So, I mean, if you don't have to wait to go dispersed camping until you've bought and built a rig for a year and a half, you can go in the vehicle that you have now. You may be limited on what you can do, but you can get out there with what you've got to start. But something that is reliable that will get you out to where you want to go through the obstacles that you want to go through. Again, we've talked a lot about toilets, I know that, but that is a big part of dispersed camping, right? Is you do have to be prepared. I use like a fold flat toilet seat thing. You put a trash bag in it. Basically, you do your business, you tie it up, you put it in, your big tire, a carrier trash bag, or a big, contractor trash bag that you throw in the bed of your truck to take out when you're done. So you do have to deal with that. You have to bring toilet paper, a fold flat toilet, some trash bags, that kind of thing, the sort of standard stuff. And I'll put links in the description down below to the stuff that I use for like dispersed camping basics, so that it's helpful. If you're looking for gear like this, then you can just check out the description down below for that. But so you do have to bring a toilet. You have to bring some way to make or prepare or store food, right? So if you want to cook a bunch of stuff, you may need a refrigerator, you may need a stove, you may need pots and pans, you're going to need silverware, right? Like it's not like a campground at a state park where you can go to a general store and buy food or get snacks or, pick up the batteries that you forgot at home. You really have to plan ahead and think through everything, because once you get out there, once you've made the trek and you've overcome the obstacles and you're at your beautiful campsite, if you get there and you realize you forgot your tent, like you're either turning around and driving back out, or you're on your own. So you have to really plan a little bit more for dispersed camping. So more planning, capable, reliable vehicle, some sort of toilet situation, some sort of food storage, and cooking implements. Because again, you may have like a fire pit. But by fire pit, I mean like a ring of rocks, right? Like that's typically what it is. So you're not going to have a grate or a grill or a big metal fire pit like you would find at a state park campground. So it's just a little bit of a different experience, but you really truly have to be sort of reliant on yourself. So that's kind of what I like about overlanding, though, right? Is that the whole point is that I have everything that I need on my rig, and I can go out for, the longest trip I've done is 2 weeks consecutively through the Wyoming backcountry discovery route. But I mean, we were really remote. Like we were 40, 50, 60 miles outside of any sort of town and didn't see anyone for entire days, right? We would go days without seeing a person, which is awesome. Different experience, but awesome. So those are kind of the things that you need to be aware of, right? So you got to be self-sufficient. You've got to be able to handle your own food, cooking, bathroom stuff. You just need to be aware. But again, you don't have to go spend $1 million on that stuff, right? I mean, some people do just dig a hole and they go to the bathroom in the hole and lean over it, and then bury it. Like you can do that too. I prefer to use the toilet and then just bag it up and take it out, just so I'm not leaving anything behind. But, you can do it either way. And same with food. You don't want to leave any trash. You want to make sure that you clean up, tread lightly, clean up more than you brought in. That's typically how I do it when I go out there. I almost always find trash, bottles, cans, broken glass, nails, rope tied to trees. Like for some reason, people are kind of crappy and they just don't take care of nature. So if you go out there, I try and clean up the sites and take all that trash with me, plus whatever trash I produce, and then take it back out with me when I leave. So be a steward, right? So that we can keep these public spaces open. You do have to sometimes go a little bit above and beyond and clean up when other people maybe didn't and made a mess. All right, so now that we've kind of talked through what you need to be prepared for dispersed camping, let's move on to pros and cons of each, right? And now I'm just going to start by saying I'm biased in this because I've been campground camping a lot of my life. And then, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I started, really researching overlanding and going on trips and doing dispersed stuff and going to national forests and kind of building my trucks up so that I could be self-reliant and have a refrigerator and dual batteries and all that. So, I've been into it for a while. Now, when I go back to a campground, I don't like it anymore, right? Like I don't like all the noises. I don't like all the people being around. When I throw up my rooftop tent or open an awning, there are a lot of folks that have never seen that before, and that's kind of neat and it's kind of fun for a while. But then after like a day or two of like every person in the campground coming up and asking if they can get in your rooftop tent or asking you what this is or that is, right? When you want to just kind of be alone and that's why you went out there was to kind of get away from things. In a regular campground, you can't really get away, right? You're just in a different place with people. So for me, I like dispersed camping because again, you get that seclusion, you get that sort of privacy, you get a place where you can actually go and like relax and take deep breaths and not have barking dogs or sounds of generators or people talking or people asking you questions or that kind of thing. So that's kind of why I go. So for me, I like dispersed camping because of the seclusion of it, because of the fun of overcoming those obstacles, right? Of discovering those awesome spots. Even in Hoosier National, where there's not a lot of trails or like difficulty or anything like that, I still love just driving around there, and I've found, a handful of spots that I really, really love in there. But I feel like every year I find another spot or two that I've never seen before that I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful spot with some neat, unique, things to look at, or a unique view, or a really fun little 2-track that's rutted out to get back to it. So like the exploration piece is really big for me too in dispersed camping. It's definitely, in my opinion, more fun to go out and try and find these awesome spots, like that LBL lakeside spot that I mentioned, where it's like, wow, we camped on a lake, we swam in the lake, versus like sitting in an established 10 by 10 camp spot with a fire ring and a picnic table at a campground that anybody could get to, right? So the exploration piece is fun. The privacy seclusion piece is fun, I think. And then again, there's just so much opportunity out there. When it's free, you're saving money on it. It's like a really reasonably priced. You got to pay for gas and you got to pay for food, right? And drinks if you bring bourbon or beer or something. But that's it, right? Like, you have to eat at home anyway. So if you're just going out to the woods, it's just kind of fun to be able to get out there for a very low cost and explore and enjoy some time away. So again, those are kind of my pros and cons. I'm very much lean towards dispersed camping now that I've done both for a long time. But there are also times when after 3, 4, 5 days of camping dispersed, I may be kind of tired of it, right? Or I may be like, hey, there's this established campground. It's $10 a night. It's closer to home. We do that at LBL sometimes. There's a campground right up by the entrance that is maybe a half hour to an hour closer to home versus some of the dispersed spots that we stay in. And while it's $10 and there are some people there, it's still pretty spread out. It is on the lake too, so that's kind of a nice bonus. It's got toilets, so I don't have to mess with any of that stuff. I can just use the toilet there if I want to. But so there are times when that makes sense. So again, not to disparage anyone doing either way. If you like campgrounds, then that's fine. Stay with campgrounds, right? If you want to get out and explore a little more and get away from people, try dispersed camping. And hopefully, again, these sort of tips and thoughts on this, basic as they may be, are helpful for you if you're just kind of getting into this and just thinking about starting. All right, so that will do it for this episode. If you're on YouTube, post up in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know what you prefer, dispersed or campground camping, and why. I'd love to hear from you. There's also links in the description down below to all my social channels, so wherever you want to come hang out, I'd love to have you. Also below this video on YouTube is a join button. That's just kind of a passive way to support the channel. If you want early access to the videos and some other perks, that's a good way to do it. Then there's a link to the Patreon group, which is a more active way to be involved with all things overlanding. We've got a 24/7 Discord. We kind of, talk a lot on there and talk about rigs and cars and stuff. We do a once a month Zoom call, and we're doing 1 or 2 trips every year. So there's that too. We try and get together when we can. Also in the description below is a link to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping themed patches and stickers. So again, especially if you're new and you're looking for like stickers to put on your vehicle or your fridge or whatever, or patches for your headliner or whatever, those are really good quality and they're pretty funny, I think. Things like don't burn your wiener and it's a hot dog, that kind of thing. And then last but not least, there is a Facebook group that I run called Newbie Overlanders that is specifically for people like you that are newer to overlanding and are looking to learn. So if you want a place that's not going to bully you, that's going to answer your questions, where you can learn a lot and have a good time, check out Newbie Overlanders. But again, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.